Hello and welcome to this presentation on instructional design considerations and approaches. In particular, we will be taking a look at the instructional design model used in this course. Why have an instructional design model? Part of that is the reputation. At SUNY Delhi, our online courses have a very good reputation, and we want to maintain that reputation in the future. Having an instructional design model allows us to attain the best design courses that really provide student success. One thing that we look at in this course and we'll be talking about a lot is equivalency. You want equivalent learning experiences for the online student as they would get in the face-to-face course. Now, equivalency does not mean equal. It will not be the same learning experience. It'll be an equivalent learning experience. And we're going to talk a lot more about this as we go through this training. And we also have a design model to make sure that we're attending to the quality of what we provide here at the university. The instructional design model that we are using is called SAM, and that stands for the Successive Approximation Model. This was developed by the same person who had developed ADDIE, only this one was developed as a more agile and flexible model that's easier to apply. It has three main steps. The first step is evaluate, then design, and the third step is develop. And you do these in a cycle, reiteratively, in order to get the best quality on your online courses. We're now going to look at each of the steps in succession. The first step is evaluate. During the evaluate step, you're going to analyze the learning needs and the learning context. You're going to look at the goals and objectives and outcomes. In particular, you want to know where you want to get those students to. Where is it that they should be as a consequence of learning at the end of the course? If you don't know where you want to go to, if you don't know where you're going, how can you choose the best path? That's why we start with the end in mind. That's why it's called backwards design. We start with the end goals and we work our way back in the design process. During this step, some of the questions you'll look at is who is the target audience? What are the learner's skills and the learning needs? In particular, we look at what do the students need to do, know, and understand as a consequence of the course. We put a lot of emphasis on the do. What can they actually do as a consequence of the learning? What can they actually apply? What is the proficiency that they walk away with? That helps you design all the learning support up to the end of that so that you can make sure they can do those things at the end of the course. What will the learning context be? What type of delivery are you going to use? These are questions to answer during this initial stage. The second step in the SAM model is design. This is where we look at the interactivity you might design into the course. We look at the layout and the organization of the content and structures. We're going to be looking at the technology choices you're going to make that are best suited to the learning needs of this particular content and course that you're working in. And again, we're going to be looking heavily at equivalency. We want to design in equivalent learning experiences. That means, for example, if the student had a field trip in the face-to-face course, you're going to figure out how they can still have that equivalent learning experience in the online course. You might, for example, have them go out and go on a field trip by themselves. For if it was to see a museum, you might tell them to choose a museum in their local community and to go and take notes and photos and come back and post those notes and photos in a forum in the course so that they're still getting the equivalent learning experience as they did in the face-to-face course. Equivalency is a very important topic during the virtual learning design and delivery program. Some of the design considerations you're going to keep in mind is about technology. For example, what file types are you going to use in the course? It's better to use what we call universal file types, like PDF, which can be opened on most devices and printed on most printers. You're going to be looking at the prerequisite skills and the tutorials necessary for the students to be successful in your course. For example, if you have them do a video project, do they know how to use Movie Maker? Maybe there's some prerequisite training or tutorials required in order to help them be successful on the learning content. You're going to be looking at file size. Smaller is always better, and streaming is definitely recommended. For example, we encourage faculty to use YouTube because YouTube compresses the videos, it streams them so that even on a slow internet connection, students can still watch the videos, and they can watch them from most devices, including mobile devices, so it increases accessibility. So next is accessibility. It's not just about attending to students with disabilities, it's also looking at learning styles, or for students for whom English is a second language. We're trying to make this learning as accessible to as many people as possible in many different ways. We're also looking at access. What is the connectivity that students will have, and mobility of learning. More and more, as time passes, students are demanding that they can access their learning on their mobile phones, so this is a really important design consideration. We also look at interactivity during the design step. How are you going to design in peer-to-peer and peer-to-professor interactivity and connections? This is very important. When building an online learning community, it is important to have interactivity built in so that students get these learning connections. Research shows that in courses where there's a strong online learning community, where students have a lot of connections with each other, there are lower dropout rates. Humans are social animals, and they require those connections with others in order to feel motivated and engaged. So this is very important consideration at this step, is to think about what are you going to design into the course to give them those options of interactivity. That's to reduce transactional distance between the student and teacher. The less distant the student feels from the course, the more connected that they are, the more likely they're going to be successful. We look at communication strategies, we look at interactive learning opportunities, and we also want to look at multiple learning approaches. If there's a video, is there also a transcript or a way to read it, or some other way to also approach learning that topic in various different learning styles and preferences. And we also look at tool and method substitution for things that were done in the face-to-face course. We also look at layout design considerations. So for example, chunking of content. What items need to go together so that students can successfully complete the learning? Keep in mind, we're designing for autonomy. Students in an online course, they don't have the instructor there to keep them motivated and to guide them through what is going on. So they need to be able to guide their own learning. So the organization of the items in the course, the way that things are connected to each other, content chunked together, the flow of the course, all of this allows the student to easily find what they need, when they need, with the other items they need it with. This is very important to encourage autonomous learning in online courses. You never want anything more than 2 to 3 clicks in, and you should be careful about how much scrolling there is and the types of colors used. All of these are important questions to consider when you're thinking about the design of a course. We also look at the quality in the design considerations. Are there hands-on opportunities for the students to apply what they're learning? Real learning, remove fluff. A lot of courses have fluff that isn't necessary. If it doesn't directly map back to the learning outcomes at the end of the course, it should be removed. You want situated learning context. Even if it's online, they can go out into their communities and they can apply what they're learning. Remember our example about the field trip. They don't have to give up a field trip because it's an online course. They can still have that experience even in the online course. So you think about how you can design in the equivalent learning opportunities in order to keep the quality of the course as good as it would be in a face-to-face course. And through good instructional design, you can also avoid plagiarism. These are all considerations that we keep in mind when we're going through the design step. The third step is the develop step. This is where you create everything. You might run a pilot, do a review with peer reviewers or experts in the field. You take all that feedback, you might adjust it and redo it and implement it. This is a reiterative step. You'll go through it many times. The idea is to always be improving what you're doing. During the development step is when you start to make your products versus your processes. So the products are the videos you might create, or the handouts you're going to give, and files, maybe quiz questions. The processes are how are the students going to learn? What's the teaching and learning processes that you're going to apply in your course? For example, science courses often use inquiry-based learning. What kind of peer-to-peer interactivity and learning experiences are you going to have? What instructional methods are you going to use? Are they going to be asynchronous lectures like we're doing here, or are you going to do a synchronous chat? What are the discussion requirements? What kind of interactivity do you expect in the discussions? This is the step where you develop all these things and you put them out there for the student to do. So today we have gone over the instructional design model called SAM. It has 3 steps: the evaluate, design, and develop, and we have looked at important design considerations and steps in each of the SAM steps. So as you start to work on your project for the end of unit of this virtual learning design and delivery course, go into the course resources folder in the course and download the file which is for the instructional design modules assignment. And in it you will see it guides you through these 3 steps that we just learned about. So use that file to help you as you go through and start designing your own unit plan.